Welcome back. We're here for another episode of Peach Pit. We have some awesome content for doing some review material from our state championship weekend this past weekend in Mercer, Georgia. We've got a great group back here for some discussion on that event. Some great guests, but before we get started, and get into our intros, we'll make the usual disclaimer that any views or opinions shared on the show are solely that of the individual contributor and do not reflect the views of Peach Pit, any FRC team, First, Georgia First, or any of their affiliates and sponsors. So, the idea behind the show is to serve as an FRC talk show that focuses primarily on the Peachtree District. We're going to be talking about a variety of topics, so don't be surprised if you see us drop some hot takes. Ultimately, we're hoping to provide some entertaining and engaging discussions. With that, we'll start off with some introductions, including a couple of guests we have on this week. Anupam, you want to kick it off?
Yeah, sure. My name is Anupam. I am the head coach for Team 1746 Auto.
My name is Kellen Hill, mentor for Team 1746 Auto.
Christopher Wilson, mentor for 1771 North Gwinnett Robotics.
I'm Brian Carlson with PCH in Night Robotics.
My name is Thomas. I am a mentor for Team 1746.
I am Matt Tishner. I'm a mentor for 2974 Robotics.
All right, welcome and congratulations on your fresh district championship win. Awesome to have you here with us.
Thank you.
All right, so to hop into some content, we're going to discuss a little bit about the qualifications, general venue feel for the state championship event. What do you all think about the venue at Mercer, the qualification experience, lead into state champs? Any thoughts?
I think this is my second favorite state champs venue. The first being the 2019 Cartersville venue.
Yes.
With that being the best one we ever had, and third being Stegman. Stegman was brutal. I did not enjoy Stegman.
It's weird because you're a Georgia fan.
Yeah, it's weird, but I had to wear earplugs in Stegman just because it was so brutal. No, I think the venue was really nice. It was weird in that how far the practice field was, where if you'd walk there and 2 matches would go by and then you'd have to walk back before being able to do anything. It was I'm happy the rumor that the pits were going to be in that location was not true.
Well, if the pits were in that location, that's just preparing you guys for World Championships, right?
Yeah.
And lugging your robot all the way across the convention center.
But World Championships is different to where, in the times that I've gone to Worlds, there's 20 matches in between your two things. There's but at States, there's a very brutal turnaround.
We struggled at one point too because we added an air tank and we had to run all the way over to inspection to get reweighed and signed off on, to run all the way back and then all the way back to the red side of the field. That was a bit of a hassle, but I think I'd have the same general grievance for where the practice field and where pit admin was. I was generally a fan of the venue otherwise. I think the stadium seating around the field was fantastic for viewing the event.
Food location and ability to escape to a silent part of the venue I particularly appreciated during lunch.
Yeah.
I also like that the practice field was large enough so that you could have people doing climbs, do shooting. I know we marked out some stuff to do auton testing over there. It's definitely a huge benefit at States to have that room, because when you go to a district qualifier, you're not going to be able to have a chance to work an auton. You get lucky if you can shoot a goal or maybe do one climb.
And that's where I agree with Thomas that by far my favorite state champs venue has been the Emerson field, just for the venue being large enough. Awesome shout out to 4188 for lugging their whole practice field.
Yeah.
But if that's something that at all can be anything associated with a state championship venue, I think there's so many perks that come with that for teams being able to refine, play at the top level, do some awesome things.
The one thing that I think was weird about the amount of space was, yes, they had the perfect amount of space where everybody could spread out, but they only bought the itty bitty little carpet. And even though it had the carpet laid out over the gym floor, it was little different square carpet pads that if your robot drove on would spread apart and expose the bare floor, so you couldn't really do a ton of driving or practice outside of this small little carpet that was raw.
Thomas is on light sensor duty today. So we actually had that issue when trying to do our autonomous driving and turning in place, like going on the carpet there versus the carpet that was above the bare floor. There was a significant difference, and we were off by more than a couple of degrees in turning on one surface versus the other.
Yeah, you got to get that right specification of Shaw carpet, I think. We actually have a piece of it in our. I don't know if that's the right stuff. I don't think that came from a playing field, but we do have a 10 by 10 piece of carpet we use for our pit flooring.
So I hear if you use carpet tape, it holds down really good. Alan from Ignite's gonna laugh at that one. We used that once at our shop, and it's a bear to get up. But if they have some of that gaffer's tape, they can definitely start securing that down. The other great thing about states in general is having all those practice matches, so you can run out there and run your autonomous, even though there might be you're not scheduled, but there's openings to get that time in. It's always helpful.
We managed to break our limelight mount in practice instead of in eliminations like we did at the previous two events.
Yeah, I was kind of hoping for a few more practice matches.
Yeah.
In our case, we're not really sure if it's the ball pressure, but our shooter was shooting short, and when we had it perfectly tuned when we left, and then the next day shooting short. So we definitely needed those practice matches to kind of tune that in, and
That's
fortunately we're
interesting.
able to tune it in pretty nicely.
Because we found the entire event we were shooting long.
Yeah.
Mm.
So I don't know if they just weren't pumped
Yeah.
up for practice matches, and then for the
Maybe
real
they did.
quals they were pumped up, but we never really figured that out.
I think there was some outside environment concerns there, because I remember our team was volunteered for an experiment where we were told to weigh our bumpers periodically to see what effect that the humidity there had, and our bumpers ended up actually gaining weight over the course of all of Thursday. So I'm wondering if maybe like the outside temperature, the swings in temperature, may have impacted the air in the balls.
You know,
We
that-
certainly
yeah,
know, because
could be.
we've had 2-pound swings on our robot.
Yeah, but
Jeff
say-
Reese, if you're watching, this is where that half pound for after quals inspection weight came from.
So let's go back to that. So on Thursday night,
Yeah.
we heard the story afterwards. We went out and got some drinks with a bunch of people. So tell me about your weight and what your nervousness was.
We were loading up in the rain outside on Wednesday night, getting ready to go down, and we were like writing up contingency plans for what to remove from the bot until it dried out at the event, because we've had significant weight swings in the past. And when we ended up, the first thing we did when we got there was weigh in, and I think we gained about a pound from the last weighing a few days before, just from humidity, with nothing else changed. But in the past, we've seen swings as high as 2.
I guess that's the one downside of building wooden
Yeah.
robots.
Yeah, see that you want to defeat
Just put a-
1771.
everybody brings a humidifier.
That was something that was talked about. No, I think the one weird thing with the practice matches is the fact that we still only have the 12. I know I drove down late Thursday because I still had classes that I had to attend to at school, and just driving down, and I arrived at like 5, and the practice matches were already done, and just going out and seeing that the field was empty and no one was using it. I think it's very weird if you have that set aside day to do practice matches. Why are we only doing 12 and then packing up and saying we're done?
Well, I thought they would have just started earlier. The 5 o'clock stop made sense to me. I figured you would have started at least at like 1 o'clock after
Yeah.
lunch. But
like, it's just weird that we only have the 12, and then you hear like in Texas that they had something crazy like 40 practice matches.
we didn't end up mattering to us because we ended up breaking our mount and spending the rest of Thursday fixing our robot.
Yeah, but
But it could have been
to
useful.
a lot of teams where they're like with 3344 coming with a completely new different robot from Albany, where those practice matches would have been very beneficial.
Yeah.
More on that one in a little bit.
Yeah, so one of the things that we talked about going down there was, getting practice matches in, but, the recommendation I made was never climb. Shoot, drive, autom, but don't climb. It's not worth risking a fall or breaking a climber in practice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we were lucky to get out there for a few practice matches and get that. I think got a number of things set straight for us. But at some point, it was what more are we going to learn from this?
Yeah.
What's the benefit of going out for another one? I think while there were only 12 or however many there were, it was a case where if teams were ready, you could just keep going and get a handful of men. But if you weren't there ready to use them, that you can use that time for working on your robot. But I do agree it would make some sense to either slow the pace down or be able to add some more in for those teams who are working on modifications to be able to make some of the practice matches.
If it wasn't for those practice matches, we would not have gotten our 4-ball Auton to work. So really enjoyed that.
That's a big thing is having access to those very realistic field conditions. Obviously, this was the actual field. But yeah, you're only going to get so far using practice field elements and trying to fine tune either your shot, your climb, or your Auton modes. So getting access to use the actual field is something we don't get to use. Otherwise, you're using qualification matches to fine tune your.
Never want to be doing that.
Yeah.
Before we start discussing qualifications, I did want to bring up another thing about the venue. I wasn't a big fan of the smaller pit sizes. And especially the narrowness of the pit walkway. There were times where like there were 2 robots coming and they had to like kind of angle so that they could fit around each other. Like if the walkways in the pits are not wide enough for 2 robots, I feel like there's a problem there, right? Your pits need to. I think they should have allocated more space for the pits, more space for walkways in the pits, and there was like it was a safety issue and. One of the safety advisors had told us that we had a certain number of people in the pit that we couldn't have because it was a safety issue. And this was outside of opening ceremonies. And my first thought was, if we're making it so that it's a safety issue to have more than like 5 or 6 students in the pit area, then we're not really... In the planning of the event, I feel like we need to prioritize giving teams the space that they need, especially at the state championship. Right?
It's very important, in my opinion, to have the student experience of everyone involved in the process for what's going on. It's very hard to have to tell a kid, sorry, you have to go sit in the stands, or like, because you have to be down there maintaining stuff. I'll be in and out of the pit, and like somebody will come grab me and be like, you got to get the kids out of your pit. And it's like, why? They earned the right to be here. They all want this experience. It's hard for me to have to go down there and be like, somebody said you have to leave, we have to cut down. Some of y'all have to make the decision that you have to leave. And I don't want to make that decision.
We already like consciously have like a pit rotation where we have 3 permanent members and 3 people rotate in, and then the mentors there, and then some of our kids will come down who aren't scouting,
just to look and
not being able to do that or like being strictly limited to that just kind of sucks, and it's not conducive for a good team experience in the pit.
That's where I don't know if it's just a struggle with the Mercer venue for trying. I guess the alternate to that is to having the team pits over in the gym where the practice field was, just because I don't think there was much other room available on the venue floor where the field was. Just trying to stretch that out as much as they could, but.
Yeah, are we going back to Mercer next year?
I don't know if it's been decided. I guess there might be some Georgia First know-how that if there are already any contracts signed. But if Emerson's available, please.
Yeah. 4188. Please.
Although I think from what I heard from other mentors on our team is that they preferred Mercer over Emerson.
Really?
Yeah, just because of Emerson was nice laid out, but it had some, we always bring in our food, so the food restrictions were a little bit more, the drink restrictions.
It was
were more of a
really
hassle.
convenient.
And then the stands were just slam packed. So at Mercer, the viewing angles were much better. I was able to close some rings on my watch from walking around so much, so that helped.
The other thing about Emerson was you basically had a curtain separating us from volleyball stuff going on over a few courts away, and I know Georgia First really had a hard time controlling Wi-Fi from people at that event in our area. So from that aspect, Mercer's definitely easier for us to sort of.
So what I'm hearing is, to find the perfect situation is that Georgia First just needs to build their own venue, and
it seems from a kid's perspective, having it at college campuses is kind of neat too. Because a lot of them are getting ready to go to college, and
the
younger ones, maybe that might be their first exposure to
I
a
still say
campus.
Georgia.
So it's kind of nice.
Georgia events are far superior to some of the other options that are available.
Yeah.
At the Mercer at state championships, we actually had our kids go out and do those like fabrication lab tours and do all the lab tours that they were
Specifically for
providing.
that reason, I think Georgia First works really hard to get it in the college system, and I think it's a really nice part of the district system we have.
I had a friend of mine watching from California watching our Dalton event. They're like, "Where is that? It's really nice." And the Dalton event is also nicely staged in that venue.
Yes.
So I know a lot of Michigan teams do in high schools, and it's really cramped. We've done grits in high schools and felt that, and this is
We
a
had
much
a-
more enjoyable
We had
experience.
an entire district event in 2019 at Forsyth that was in a brand new high school.
Yes.
Yeah,
So it's
that was like it was 30 teams that felt cramped with 30 teams in there.
yeah.
So,
Yeah, I think what is easy to point out here is that the sore spots usually stick out. So, but there are a ton of positives
There
I
are.
think from to be noted here. That it's sometimes you just got to deal with certain things and be happy with what you get. But moving on, qualifications at district champs. Any thoughts on the match schedule? I know looking at it right away, we were pretty happy to never have to play against 1771 or mechanisms that I think we lucked out in a couple of ways. But any initial reactions to what you saw from qualifications?
Walton came out hot. They were really impressive. I was there. Their intake. I have to say nice things
Hold
about
on,
them.
hold on, Thomas.
Were you compliment
I have a hearing problem. What did you just say?
Okay, listen.
Louder.
Come on.
They finally found a way to utilize their dual intake system well.
Finally, I think they were doing
I mean,
a pretty good
I
job
like
before
Karen.
that.
Actually, the intakes didn't really change
Yeah.
much.
So
I
the
think it
shooter
was
is what
the shooter was what changed.
Yeah.
I think the weird thing is I didn't really see all much at Carrollton, but from watching at Dalton, it seemed there was just some learning curve with the driver with the new
Yeah,
swerve
brand new,
and
brand new.
having the okay, I have stuff on both sides. That was where a lot of the criticism was, where I was just pointing some stuff out that I saw, but seeing that thing to its full potential.
I think that's the whole benefit of the district system.
Yeah.
Is that you get to watch that over a season.
Yeah, and I think seeing it over a season, it was definitely really, really cool to see it at its highest point. I still am a big fan of one intake gang, but two intakes did not turn out to be as bad a decision.
I think it's a trade-off when you look at it, because you have the two intakes with a bot that has to rotate to shoot, versus our decision with the turret and the intake, so you can have the intake wherever you are. I think they both have their merits and their
Yeah.
With that being said, I think you both had some of the best driven robots out there. I think we talked early in the season, Walton's got a lot of the right pieces, but will they get to their ceiling? You guys, obviously got there.
We're
don't think they're
we're
at the
getting
ceiling
there.
yet,
We're not
yeah.
quite there.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
on pace to reach it. So I
Yeah.
think that's super cool to watch. But yeah, I'd have any curiosities for your driver system. Because you have different colored wheels on each one.
Yeah,
but is
that
it a
kind
case
of helps.
where
The manipulator's main job is to just put the intakes down. The driver also shoots, because he knows obviously he needs to be stopped, and he just can make sure that he stops and the wheels, they go in an X pattern that was implemented just for state, so we don't get pushed around as much, and I think that was pretty effective. But yeah, they both had they're both first year drivers. The driver's a freshman, the manipulator's a junior. But they've just really improved. And they basically had 11 matches of drive practice before states, and that was it. Because all that was, after Dalton, that was kind of a shooting. We shot about 50%. At that point, they started redesigning the shooter. They had time for a quick workaround. And then right after Carrollton, they had the shooter assembled, swapped it out. Luckily, they just unbolted one, bolted on the other, tuned it, and we're ready to go. So.
Gotcha. Yeah, it was impressive to watch, and I think this is a big distinction between. There are some teams that'll have swerve drive, and it's okay, you have an advantage over a lot of teams just with how you're able to maneuver, but there are some teams that actually use all of those advantages, and you two are a couple of the ones that the driver knew that, all right, going to shoot, we have to, and you guys not having the advantage of a turret had to rotate back in order to have your shooter in line.
Yep.
but you guys for 1771 would then have the ability to go shoot wherever, but your driver was instantly looking at, all right,
Yeah.
where's the next cargo, and on their way to driving towards it, were already had their intake in the right
Yeah.
direction. And it was just some of the smoothest driving I've ever seen, and it was awesome to watch.
And then another team we haven't shouted out is 4188.
Yes.
Didn't started playing where they didn't stop to shoot. Just
Yeah.
their robot was moving a little bit slower than it normally did, but they were just able to constantly just shoot, grab ball, shoot, grab ball, shoot. And I think had they had a couple more matches to get that 100% ironed out, I think they would have surpassed the output that any of the individual 2974 or 1771 teams could put out. But the fact that they had to beat both of them at once is just a hard strategic decision, especially in elims, where it's like, okay, I've shut down 1771, but 2974 just put up 20 balls. Shoot. You know?
That's where 4188, like, that was a huge advantage for them, especially playing through defense. Like, defense didn't slow them down. They could just, like, oh yeah, they're getting pushed, I'm just going to shoot still. Oh, you're trying to bump me a little bit? No, I can just shoot on the run.
Yeah.
Like, that's going to be such a huge advantage for them.
Especially if
going
they
into
get it
games.
really, really tuned for Worlds.
That helps for shooting, but you have to be able to. The intake might turn out to be the bottleneck then.
Yeah.
That's
So,
what
yeah.
we noticed, because we played with shoot on the move and it worked, but the driver would be spending so much time flowing around the field that it actually lowered our ball output. I mean,
Yeah.
we didn't have, like, we had to limit our speed, which is the same as 4188. I think it's a trade-off. Depends on how well you have it tuned. If they get it there, we're working. If we can get ours there, we'll go back to doing it. But you really have to have it tuned well to be able to do it and not affect the driver's ability to seek cargo.
I think at that point, like, you're just limited by the 90 FPS of the limelight.
Yeah.
You need a higher frame rate camera, or you need to use some sort of visual odometry algorithm to, like, predict where the goal is
Yeah.
going to be as you move at a higher speed.
Yeah.
And that's where watching, I think, some 1690 match video. There's even for the ones that are doing it the best out of anybody. But there are a couple instances where there's a harsh enough maneuver right as they're shooting
Yeah.
that they get a couple balls off. But the 95% of the time
Yeah.
they know where the robot's turning to or moving to, that they can just put the ball in the right spot. So, but yeah, being in Peachtree for as long as I have, it's insane that Peachtree teams are playing at this level, and it really forces us to
I remember
consider putting our foot on the gas for the off season to do what we can to keep
To
up.
catch up.
Remember the dark
I
days,
think-
the dark days of 2011, where it was what, like, 4 teams in the playoffs could score a tube on the
Yeah.
higher rung, and then there was a playoff match where an alliance scored 0. Like, we have come a long way from the dark days of 2011.
I think this in 2019, I think 1771 is the best robot Georgia has sent to Worlds this in recent history. You can go back to like 2007. 1 second.
Chris, would you rather have your 2008 robot or your 2022 robot?
Oh, that's a hard question. That 2008 robot held some pretty cool records.
Yeah, but like since districts has happened, I think the closest 2 robots that come to mind on being close to the 254 level is 2019 Walton and Otto of and that group. But the difference being neither of them had the climb.
Yep.
Right? There was no. We had both of the teams had optimized. We can put up rockets with anybody, but those guys could do that and climb. Where this year, 1771 can. Oh, we can put up all the balls that 254 can, and we can climb too.
Yeah.
And I think that's a unique thing. And if Walton gets up there with their ball output, I think 971 has shown in California taking it to 1678 and 254. You don't necessarily need a high climb if you just score a ton of balls.
One of
So
the
it's
things
really
we were
exciting.
looking at the post-match video, because the whole time of states they're then pushing for see how will this compare to Worlds. When we were in finals, we were able to put up with 8 seconds left, with 10 seconds left, they picked up 2 balls, shot 2 balls, and still climbed high, and that is matches what 254 can do with their traversal, but off by a point. But
Yeah.
I don't think I think we'll find the traversal is not all it's meant to be.
Yeah, I think teams that can do the skip the high bar like
Yeah.
254 and 16,
I
78.
don't know. Even with their skip, it takes them almost 9, unless they've sped it up. Because the last time we were looking at them, they were right under 9 seconds.
Yeah, that's way too long.
I mean, if you can put 2 balls up and climb in 3 seconds.
That's again the crazy part about what we're talking about of how good this robot is.
Yeah.
The other thing about the competition was very interesting is you look at how deep it was, right? There was 1 or 2, going into it, you knew Walton, North Gwinnett, and Mechanisms and 4188 were the strong shooters. But you go beyond that next tier, there were, going
6919 was up there with that tier.
Yeah, it's
Like,
just,
they
there was
were
another 10 bots
underappreciated.
that were out there solid scoring. And we talked about, the shooting. If you think about how the district has evolved, the Limelight has allowed a lot of teams that had a programmer shortage that couldn't get vision working can now do that. And so every team can have a shot at being up at the top.
Yeah, I think Limelight is one of the best things to happen to First, where it has opened up the accessibility to vision tracking.
I'm very excited to see where Photon Vision goes.
Well, that too. But fundamentally, teams don't have to roll their own. I mean, when Grip came out in 2016, it was great. But the problem was if you ran it on the reel, you ran it on CPU. So if you ran it on the driver station, you had the back and forth lag time. At 1261, they got it working with, Raspberry Pi using OpenCV directly, and that took a lot of work, and not every team can do that.
2016, the popular workaround was tape a flashlight to your robot
Yep.
and aim it at the tower, see the flashlight on it, shoot.
Yeah.
2415.
Mm-hmm.
They did that year.
If it works, it works. I know my parents' team up in Illinois is just doing the vision to the driver's station and it has a crosshair right in the middle of the screen. Driver just aims it at the thing and shoots.
We went to Walmart and bought a light and had mistakenly didn't realize we bought some kind of smart light that you hit on your hand and it changes modes. So we go out and did our first match in 2016 with the light on there and they're like, this is great. But then sign the light, shoot the balls. About halfway through the match, somebody started playing defense on us. And it got triggered, and all of a sudden it went into strobe mode. And the drivers on the other side are like, ah! Jeff, as soon as the match is over, we see Jeff Reese power walking over to us, and we're like, we know, we know.
There can be interesting things. I think Limelight has done a lot of good. I think the newest version of like the Limelight thing is the SDS swerve modules.
Yes.
I will say, I think that can be a little bit of a trap. It's great that Swerve is now way, way, way more accessible to teams, but
I think it's too accessible because there were teams who I think what was it? It was a team that won Rookie All-Star where they bought
Storm.
They
8849.
they bought their swerve modules for state and then just could never get them working.
There were several teams in this season that went that let's buy that fancy swerve system. Oh, let's buy 8 Falcon motors and drop $2,000+ on this system, and now we've got to get it working. We just bought the system, but we don't literally know how it works.
I will say I think it depends on which system you went with, because there were a lot of the Rev is awesome, but they don't have the remote sensor. I think the remote sensor is what convinced us to go Swerve.
You're saying use Neos instead of Falcons?
I'm saying don't use Neos because they can't see the remote sensor.
Gotcha.
So I don't know of a single team that ran Falcons and at the Absolute and the CAN coders that ever there might have been teams that had electrical issues, but they all moved. I think a lot of the teams I saw that had issues were running with Rev and having to figure out how to convert and get information to the Neos. It's possible and it definitely works very well, but I think it was significantly a much greater challenge.
A quick
that's
question.
where we have our Swerve over here with Neos on it, but didn't quite get it to its peak, but a pretty functional state.
Did y'all buy your modules at the start of the season, or had y'all already bought them and started playing with them?
We had the MK3s that we took to Grits in July Heat, and they program identically to the MK4 inverteds, except the Turner motors, or all the motors are inverted.
Now, a funny story is when we picked the Giganites, as our
Yeah.
second bot, they were running Thrifty Swerve like we were, and they had a wheel that I guess wasn't turning, so our pit crew basically rebuilt one of their swerve drive, gave them the spare parts they needed, and got it working right before the playoff started, so
Yeah,
that was
yeah,
pretty
we
fortunate.
certainly had to struggle through
Oh,
them for
God.
defense in our,
Yeah.
in at least the first semifinal matches. You didn't need to play defense on us in
Yeah.
the second one. But,
Coming back to like the swerve conversation, like Limelight's been great because it's easy to use. It makes vision just this black box where you tune a bunch of sliders, and if you know anything about HSV or vision recognition, you can get that thing tuned really easily. My issues with the swerve drive system, COTS swerves, is they're just so expensive that eats up so much of your budget that teams who aren't budget conscious or teams who need to build more of a foundation, they're going to go for that shiny thing, end up with a swerve drive system that's really expensive to replace if they break it. It has some software support, but you're still relying on using a lot of external vendor libraries that if your programming team's not confident or built up, that it may take the whole season for them to get it working.
I haven't looked into the SDS library, but I'm surprised so many teams used it because, and I don't know how anybody else did it, but a lot of people I've talked to didn't even touch the default code from the WPI lib, because that's all ours was drop the WPI code in there and then set up the remote encoders. The kids spent like probably 6 months writing their own things because they wanted to try doing the vector math and everything, and they'd spent a lot of time writing the math and had issues with it.
That was our issue with that robot.
They made the decision, I think, a week before Grits. Well, we're going to try WPI lib because it had just been released or it was a beta or something. 45 minutes after they downloaded the first build to the chassis, we had the drivetrain running.
that's where I think there's still, and I think there's plenty of evidence for teams that use Swerve Drive this year, but there's still a huge difference between
There
somebody
is.
running Swerve
Yeah.
and knowing how to use it, or
Yeah.
and not knowing how to use it compared to.
It's probably also biased because they had a lot of experience from writing the other code. So, but I will say WPI, the libraries have come a long way from where they used to be.
You know, we made the choice consciously at the very beginning of the season, you know, based on our team size and, you know, how many junior or very rookie type students we had, that Swerve was out of the equation. We want to play with it, and hopefully we'll play with it this off season. But I've seen enough people go through it where, unless you're really confident in the mentors to support the students with the experience, I'd always try to do it off season, because if it doesn't work, it's going to fail miserably,
Yeah.
and you don't want to tank your season.
Yep.
Yeah.
So,
No. And I think if you're trying anything that new, you should always try it the off season before. I think the example of this is like Jack and the Bot. You know, the team that they were the reason the SDS module exists. They didn't touch Swerve. They tried it one off season in 2017, and they're like, okay, we figured it out in the off season, and then they put it on their robots.
Yeah.
And I think that's just something that if you're going to try something like you've never done before, that's that big,
Yep.
where you can't necessarily revert it. Like if you're trying a turret for the first time, you can lock that puppy in place and just fix it.
This has been a thing since mid 2000s, back when I first started doing first. Is that there was? I think they even called it swerve drive syndrome, or I forget the exact terminology for it. But even before swerves were available off the shelf, is that you'd go and watch either 118 or whoever else.
16 or
Yeah, running swerves and seeing what maneuvers they were able to pull off, and teams would decide their next season, oh, we're going to run swerve. That even if you did it in the off season and did a good job with it, there was still a likely chance that you're going to struggle with it during the season, because it's your first time running it. You're going to run through all the bugs. You might do it better the next year, but you're usually going to struggle with it your first year. But it's interesting to see what happens over the generations of first, and what happens when COT swerves become available. That it's still semi-noticeable that just because you bought a swerve doesn't mean it's the magic solution.
Yeah.
The one thing that scares me is I really enjoyed it when it used to be, okay, everybody did tank and the swerve teams were like, oh, they're so cool, they do swerve. But now that swerve is becoming the thing that everybody is doing, because it used to be, 254 never does swerve because you don't need it. But now even they're doing swerve. It's scary to see the world where it's like, to be competitive at the world stage, you need to be able to do this very, 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 very hard thing to do.
Well, I don't think they'll always be that way. There could be games where it's going to fit, but as soon as everybody starts using swerve and swerve becomes that much of a game advantage, the game design committee can easily put certain field elements or obstructions in the way to make swerve not a valuable thing.
Yeah, like a 2016 game again.
Yeah, because you can't make it where the ante to play the game is $4,000 and buying just hardware to get going.
Yeah.
I think it depends on, like, going back to, like, this play to your strengths, because you talk about swerve being hard for some teams. If 1771 was ever tasked with building a West Coast drive, you would watch us flounder for an entire season and have trouble moving. West Coast drive is something we would never attempt in the years. We've never done it. We don't have the experience for it. I didn't even realize that we had a conversation with mentors earlier in the year. One of the other teams was asking for help with their drivetrain, and they were specking out a West Coast drive. We got halfway through, like, helping with someone, and I was like, I honestly have no idea. I have no experience with this. I can't help you with this.
Yeah, good to have people available for the questions, but knowing your own limits.
Yeah.
I don't think Team Auto's done a drive with a drop center in years, right?
I think 2016 was the year we did do it.
I think in 2018 we had one.
I don't think so. I think
Just that we had Omni wheels on the one side of it. I think 2019 accidentally had one just because the Omni wheels, the 6-inch Omni wheels, were accidentally unintentionally designed just a hair smaller than the treaded wheels, so had a little bit of a rock there, but back to qualifications.
Went on a little tangent there.
So how about FRC?
Yeah.
All right, it was interesting to watch the I think ranking shift around. I think Walton jumped out to the early lead, and it just kept growing and growing and growing. And you're like, is anybody going to be able to catch these guys?
Except for the first match.
Yeah.
If you recall, we were basically bypassed.
Oh, yeah.
They said, there's no code in your robot, and it just turned out they just bypassed us way too quickly instead of resetting the global Rio. So that was kind of a tough start, but then it started going right pretty quickly.
It got to be the point of, is anybody going to be able to catch these guys? And something that played into that was in match 29. And I don't know if, Chris, you want to walk us through what you went through field side on that one?
So match 29, during the match, I knew something was wrong because we were watching it and we had our strategy planned out, and it kind of fell apart when all of a sudden, out of nowhere, we were like significantly behind. And to be honest, like we still should have been able to pull the match out, I think, but I think we kind of got flustered, honestly. That's one of the things we've actually talked about post event, was that match was a lesson that we will take to Worlds, because we missed our climb, we really weren't balling like we normally were. Something was off about the way we were going, and I think part of that was just getting flustered, and we didn't have the appropriate plan going in, and we didn't rotate the plan as the match went on. Is this the
replay of match 29 that we're seeing, or is this the original?
This is the original.
Yeah, so for teams that do not know, what ended up happening is there ended up being a weird FMS issue.
Right there. Look,
Yes.
their cargo score just jumps
by
from
10.
So when the cargo jump
It's a
occurred,
7.
the we all got a little flustered back there because mechanism's having trouble. I'm trying to figure out what's going on with the score because I'm like, what happened? Because I had no idea. We're trying to figure it out, and our plan kind of fell apart after that, and we ended up being late to the climb.
Yeah, and I remember this happening right after this match. Yeah. For those of you who don't know, I'm the mentor who directly connects with the scouts for Team Auto. I just remember connecting with the 1771 guys, and we just had a quick powwow of, okay, let's look at our data. Let's see what happened, right? Because there's a chance of, oh, maybe we missed something. Maybe this is legit. This type of thing doesn't happen that much. And then it just generally became, as we, I looked at it, and then we looked at it, and we both came up with like, okay, only 15 balls should have been scored for this Red Alliance here. How did they get? Why are we off by 11? And then you go, and it's like, okay, maybe we both had the same bum scout who forgot to scout like one team that just went off. And then it was just a really weird thing. And then the hardest part is like there was no communication about the issue after the fact. From what I've heard, I think a lot of that wasn't on Georgia First side. I think a lot of it was Big First saying we don't see any issue.
Also, it took a while. Like, we had already had issues, and my first thing was we can't immediately go back to the question box immediately after the first match where we had more issues, because we didn't want to be causing problems if there wasn't actually an issue, because we didn't have any. It was just one of those like weird feelings like, I don't think that's right.
And obviously with no match,
With-
or no video replay, you can't say
So-
like, hey, there's something actually wrong here,
So
instead of saying we feel like this.
Yeah, I was like, I'm not. The student's not going to go to the question box and be like, we think something was wrong with that match.
Yeah, you know
So-
how that goes. Yeah.
So we put our scouts on that, and they started investigating, and obviously, we figured out later that there was an issue, and at that point we went forward and tried to get it rectified.
Can I just pause for a second? Like, look at this score, right? Even with that bug, this is just a testament to how good your robot is. Like, even with that bug, you've caught up in cargo. You've beaten them in cargo here, and you're just down a few points.
This was
despite
this
that
was
bug.
like, I actually think this is a blessing in disguise, because this was something like we plan to talk about as we get closer on our Wednesday thing. This is one thing I'm specifically going to have a discussion about, is we had this match still. Like, let's ignore the field fault, because there's always going to be minor issues. We still should have won this match. It's on us for losing this match, and that's important to understand as a takeaway. If we had held together and nailed everything like we normally do, we had the robot to pull this match out. And at Worlds, you're going to have to deal with everything that throws your way. There's always going to be, that's just part of FRC. Hopefully it's not this bad all the time. I mean, every now and then you're going to have issues, but you got to play around them.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit more about qualifications. Specifically, let's get into like some of the wagers.
So
we had.
before we go on, I want to sort of go back to match 29, because I know there was some explanation sort of talked about at the competition. And so from my understanding, what happened was, at the time of the instance, there was communication between Connie, I'm not sure if Connie, but Connie and Jan were talking to First, trying to get this sort of be replayed. That they were advocating for that. And Big First said no. And so it's very key to understand that the staff, the FTAs, everybody that's at the event are Georgia First people, and they have opinions of what should happen. But at the end of the day, it's not their decision, right? Those replays come from First. And so finally, after more advocating by Georgia First later on in the night and reconsideration by First did make the decision to replay it. So kudos for everybody at Georgia First to keep going forward with that. We understand that this is definitely a field issue. It's not a human-made error. It's not a configuration issue. This is just something that's strange that happened, and they did their best to sort of advocate on our behalf, and eventually that did happen and replay the match.
Yeah, awesome to have them go to bat like that. We want this to be replayed, and we need your green light in order to do it. Because I think it takes a lot away from a STEM-based competition when you can realize you have an issue, you know it's an issue, but you just decide to, well, nothing we can do about it. Just don't worry about it. And people, it's like, what are we doing here?
Why are we here?
And the other thing is, I believe they did the same advocacy during Quals 3 when we played. We had some networking packet loss. They actually argued or advocated on behalf of us, and First said no, right? So they have our back. We just need to. It could be the heat of the competition, right?
Exactly,
just realize that the staff there is sort of out of their control in that part.
Yeah, and that's where I think it's very easy to lose your temper in that situation for getting over frustrated, and that can happen on both sides.
Yeah.
But we're all human, and I think there, just some benefit of the doubt to be given on, all right, we're here trying to do the right thing for us, and we realize you as volunteers are here trying to do the right thing for us. We'll try to take some deep breaths where we can find them, and try to work together. So
Food court was a great place to have deep breaths.
But glad it all worked out. Obviously, then I don't know how Walton felt about it, as 1771 hopped him in the rankings.
Honestly, we don't really worry about stuff beyond our control.
Yeah. But yeah, it was crazy. Yeah, watching how far Walton got ahead, I was like, is even with the replay, is 1771 going to be able to catch him? But once the replay happened, then whoosh, 1771 takes off.
Yeah.
But yeah, you got clear and obvious choice for this. either with Walton on top or 1771. The pair up was going to happen.
I think I'm confident to say that I think 1771 could have won with 6 different robots at this event. I think you.
I don't know.
Depends who to play against.
We were throwing up a lot of points too. If you look at the data, we were right up there.
Well, and that's where I think the argument is how many other teams undefended could do that. So depending on the alliance you're playing and the strategy they use, if they're only sending one robot over to play defense, who's going to have that? All right, undefended numbers are up here, but if defended numbers are, and I think 1771's the hardest one to play defense on, that they're going to go down to here, but certain other teams on that top list are going to drop quite a bit further, which I think we had some fun, and I think we'll get into a little bit more.
Qualifications here.
Yeah, eliminations conversation a little bit later.
So, speaking of that, 1771 taking off, how did they do on ranking points versus our expectations?
All right, let's get into some wagers from last weekend on some numbers we were bold enough to put on paper. All right, so first wager I have on my list here is how many unicorn matches, and to go through our
4 ranking points, right?
Yeah, so a unicorn match, for anybody unaware, is a match in which the team wins, an alliance wins, as well as achieves both of the extra ranking points for cargo and hangar points. So, out of a possible, there were 64 matches. So 64 possibilities for a unicorn match, because each alliance has a possibility. We went through the math last week.
Yeah.
But 64 opportunities. We put our numbers on paper. Anupam went high with 48 out of the 64. Next lowest was me at Thomas at 40. Me at 35 and Brian at 30. Any guesses before? Anupam might be looking over my shoulder here.
Yeah, I'm alright.
But the number was 30, so Brian nailed it.
Yep. Nice.
We're already doing better than our wagers from the beginning of the
I'm
season. Take
Go
it
and
when you-
cash your chips out.
All right, next up we have how many teams have 40 RP? We'll start at the top again. We have Anupam with 6, Thomas with 5. We have an order established here for who's ambitious. Brian with 4 and me with 3. Any guesses on how many teams had over 40 RP? Some of you may know this from. Huh?
1.
The answer was 1. We have them sitting right here.
Yeah.
So
Was it? I don't even
you had
know.
41 RP.
Okay.
So doing a quick check on that one. Yeah, it's 41. Then Walton had 38 for the next, and then popped down to 35. So. Some impressive RP numbers looking at there, but all of us were a little bit high still on that one. But all right, next one up, how many RPs will it take to get the 8th seed? All right, starting at the top, we have Anupam at 36, still going high, Anupam.
No, I was a little high on Georgia teams.
Brian with a 34. We had Thomas with a 30 and myself with a 29. Again, RPs to take the 8th seed. Actual number 31. So we had
Thomas, you were the closest.
we had a good number right in the middle there for all of our guesses. So props to us. I think we did a good job. We're
Other than me.
coming around on our predictions. So high score in quals. Let's see. We got for high. I had the high number on this one for 150. Thomas at 146. Anupam with a 136, and Brian with a 130. I believe we also have. I think 1771 was definitely in this match.
Yeah, they were.
Yeah.
I actually have it up
And
here.
Walton was in the match as well.
Yeah.
So no, sorry,
Yeah, they were both in that match.
it was no. I'm looking at Carrollton. Never mind.
No, they were both in that match still.
But yeah, still in that match for quals 51, I think, for
Yep.
134.
I've got video of it. Let's just check it out real
So I think by Price is Right rules, I think Brian actually won that one.
quick. What? No.
For
2 for 4.
130, and it was 134.
What?
You went over by 2. You can't.
Price is Right rules
I
is
like
the way
that.
to do this.
Let's go with it.
Hey, if 1771 had made that
No
on
video
top,
review.
I know.
No review.
But yeah, again, I think we did much better. I think it was awesome to see the level of competition that showed up for how frequently teams were putting up 4 RPs per match.
And while we're talking about bets, can we talk about how everybody made fun of me for my top 3 being wrong? Top 3 at state. What? 1771, number 1. Walton is number 2. And guess who's number 3? 6919. And yes, I was a little high on Ignite, but I went 3 for 3 for my first 3. No one else did that. No one else did that.
Where's that mute button? I know we have somewhere
I will say this: there were some matches where I'm like, "Wow, we should have had that climb RP, and we didn't get there in time." And I'm like, "Oh, that's going to hurt us." It really did feel like, even though there were, almost half the matches were unicorns. You really needed to get every RP you could get.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I think we said this beforehand.
We were looking at like our schedule. We had 2 matches left on Saturday, and we were like, we need to have a 3 RP and a 4 RP match if we want to keep our number 3 seed. Otherwise, we tumble all the way down to like 8.
And then we lost both of them.
Yeah. But that just shows you how not just how valuable, but how necessary it was to get the climb and the cargo.
Is this the first event where 1771 didn't have the first seed locked up on day 1?
No, I think there was a chance at Carrollton. I think we were much more secure at Carrollton, but it wasn't locked down.
It's been really fun to see this game evolve and become so high scoring and just offense.
Well, and so looking at, I think, our district numbers for Cargo RP or Hangar RP, I think we were commonly in the, they never jumped the 30% mark for either of those statistics. I think we got to 20 and 30 or something. But at state champs for Cargo RP, bonus achieved was 57% of success rate for 73 matches out of 73 opportunities out of 128 opportunities. And the Hangar RP was right there with 77 opportunities out of 128 opportunities at 60%. So
That's nuts.
yeah. Beyond impressive.
Imagine
Well done,
what it's going to be
Peachtree
at
teams.
Worlds.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So
I think it's a fun game that really escalates to all levels, and I think obviously at some point you kind of cap out on Auton points, you cap out on Hangar points. That you're all guns blazing and teleop for who can shoot the most cards.
Well, that's like we played you in semifinals. I'm like, we can match you in odd time. Teleop's a different story. We used to have an advantage in climb, but now in climb, everybody's climbing, right?
Mm-hmm.
It became a very much a teleop game.
this was one of those matches here. Like this is Qual 17. This was the previous match was the highest score by one alliance. This match here was the highest combined score, and this was a really cool match. When you have qualification matches like this, you know that your game is.
I think this is the best match that Georgia had all year.
Yeah,
This was a cool match.
I'll
Yeah.
take that.
You weren't even in it, Chris.
I like watching it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was
This was a fun match for the team.
Yeah, it was just incredible to put up that many points, and at the end of the match look and say, "Oh, we scored 116 points."
Yeah.
Wait,
Well, we lost.
Like, what?
Like that's nuts. You don't think you'd be able to score that many and lose?
Yeah, well, if you're going to Worlds, get ready to put up that much and lose. I think the fun aspect of the game, and games that have been the most entertaining to watch, of harkening back to like 2017, where you had that clear, okay, you can max out autonomous with the 2-rotor and the hopper, but then once you got that, it just became, okay, who can do the most in teleop? And I think those types of games are the best. The games that often lead to being the most unfun to watch are like 2015, where, okay, this team got 3 cans, the other team only got 1, that team wins. Or in 2018, where it became, oh, well, this team had this scale and it put 4 cubes on the scale on autonomous, and we only put 1. We can't.
Hey, that was
There were instances where that didn't happen, but like 254 didn't lose a single match all year. That year.
I think the
That
hangers
Auton was a killer.
almost captured, at least approached the excitement of Rebound Rumble where you had the exciting balling action and then the bridges.
Yeah.
Nothing compares to the excitement of the triple balance on the bridges and the excitement
Oh yeah,
and the
the
elimination.
suspense of that thing rocking
Yes.
back and forth or tipping over
Yeah.
right as the buzzer happened.
Like you
robots
watch
rolling.
4188 or somebody traversing really fast, and you get it gets a little bit of that excitement going, and it was kind of nice. I really like those end games where you're like it's
Yeah,
on the
anything could
anything
happen right
could
now.
happen.
Or like and that's why I really like and wish we could have got Infinite Recharge the entire of like, oh, we didn't climb with, yes, we were both up, but we climbed in the wrong spots. We were like this, and the potential. I think Infinite Recharge had the potential to be one of the best games we ever had. This game being so good just makes me wish we would have gotten that game all year long.
I don't know. By the time of Infinite Recharge, the last event, I was like, I'm glad I'm not playing this game anymore.
Well, we'd also
I got
played 2
tired.
years of it.
Yeah.
I like
that's
this game a lot better.
I like this game a lot better
the
too.
The climb is straightforward, right? You can break dirt at the last second because the percentage of points from the climb in Infinite Recharge was you had to do it. You couldn't risk it. In this game, it was a matter of, like in this one, who's going to break last? Who's going to possibly risk their climb to get a couple more cargo?
Well, it's not a binary thing for climb. It's not a did you climb or didn't you climb. It's
Right.
a where did you climb to and how fast did you do it.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I think the closest game that has come to, at least in my brief history, being the only one who has not been with first for 12 years, almost.
10.
Okay, I'm sorry. Price is Right rules. I lose. I think the closest game that this comes to is 2017, where it's like, okay, who's going to the chicken of I stay shooting the balls, and then I miss, the climb. But this game is one of my favorite ones.
Yeah, my favorite was 2016 that I've experienced personally since 2014. I think I like this game better than 2016.
Yeah.
I think this is my favorite game in my entire FRC career.
Yeah, it's one of my. I think one of my favorites as well. One of my favorites being 2006, just for the offense-defense period rotation. I think that added a real interesting layer. I think there was a huge correlation with if you win autonomous mode, generally you won the match, just because you got to go on defense first and stock up on game pieces while the other team was struggling to. All right, we got to get game pieces and score them during our offensive period, and didn't have time to get things together. But I think at the World Championship levels, it was one of the coolest games to see for game flow.
Yeah.
But I think this game's going to be nuts, just like Thomas was talking about for 2017, of who's going to break last in order for shooting cargo to go get their climb. Because I think at World Champs in 2017, it was a case where
3310 broke early and then lost because of it.
Yeah,
that's one of the reasons why we've been talking about. I think the all or nothing skip-a-bar climbers might come back to bite the teams. I really do.
Because they can't go for the high bar?
Because they can't go for the high bar.
Yeah.
I really think it will. Because 254, as it is right now, 9 seconds to get from mid to traversal versus a 3-second high. I think we lucked into that wasn't something we strategically did, and this whole time we've been pushing for the traversal. But the more I watch match footage, the more I see what's going on, I think there's going to be matches on Einstein where they're going for it, and maybe they balled harder and broke a little bit later, but they were a second short. They've now invalidated their entire 8 seconds of climbing. Has now just been wasted. There's no incremental gain through the time. I think we're going to find that it hurts some of those teams.
Or a really quick high climb will be just as important as a traversal.
Yeah.
It's not deep space where a triple climb was going to win on Einstein.
Yes.
You could have a double traverse and a high, or a traverse and 2 highs, or
It's
something
flexible,
like that is what's.
I think being
Just
flexible,
because the teams that are that good are going to have that, and they're going to have it's going to be an 8-ball auton on both sides. There's going to be a little bit of randomness where the balls fall in teleop, and then they're both going to come in with 30, 40-point climbs.
I think there's going to be
almost anything can happen. There's going to be a lot of teams that can participate.
I think we're
in
going
that.
to start seeing that. I think 9-ball autos are going to happen for several teams.
Oh, you mean just recycling
For
the balls
several
to come down,
alliances.
yeah.
I think.
I guess that's the only
Or
thing you
going
can
to
do.
the other side of the field.
Yes.
There are weird loopholes where you can go to the other side of the
Really?
field. Yeah.
Yes.
We were prepared for you guys to break that out. By the way, we were talking
I
about
know.
having Grady doing some defense on your ball on our side of the field
Yeah.
just to make sure you weren't going to come over for it. But we were hoping to play a trap there for
Yeah.
you guys not knowing.
Well, see,
we were
I think there's
prepared
going to be a
for it.
chess game.
Come over
for
and
that.
practice, and we'll see.
I think because we already have the 6-ball working. We ran it and it worked. If we have a match where it was successful. If you wanted to show it,
Mhm.
they called the penalty incorrectly.
Q3.
Yes, Q3. We ran it and it worked.
Okay.
We destaged the ball correctly. We didn't
Oh,
score all the
hold on,
balls
wait.
because our limelight was off.
Let me try and find that real quick.
Do you think at Worlds the placement rule comes into very important
I do,
effect?
and I think there's other I think we over prepared. We had a bunch of autonomouses because I think it was going to be from that one location. We had like 6 different autonomouses we could run. We ran 2 of them.
Alright, let me see if I can play this one.
And I
Because
think
there's going to be an option of blocking them from
All right.
stealing.
So, when you run this one in slow motion.
Oh.
Flagged immediately.
Yeah, but according to our interpretation of the rules, and we asked about it after this, as long as the ball is not considered a part of the robot, it's its own definition in the glossary. So a ball can destage another ball. So you hold it in the front of your robot,
Ah.
and it will destage the ball right there. It rotates in and then punts it
Oh.
with the front of our robot.
Because the autonomy rule says you cannot intake
Yeah.
cargo unless it's been moved from its initial position.
Yeah.
So by bumping it with not your
I
robot,
see. Okay.
it's now
Yeah.
distinct.
Yeah, that's slick.
yeah, and I
It doesn't wait long enough, as you'll see. It misses one of the balls, and our
Yeah.
limelight was off, so we scored none of them. But
It looks like you hit it with your bumper in that.
No, it was pretty.
It was
center
with the
right
ball.
on the
It
ground.
was.
Yeah.
You see it adjust to it
That's
right.
precise.
it adjusts
there.
right at the last second.
Yeah, that is insane. Holy cow.
Yeah.
We are
And if you notice, we backed up too fast. If we had hesitated there, we would have grabbed the ball.
Shout out to Blues Human Player for singing that shot, by the way.
He's getting some claps over there.
But the question is, how are they going to call it? Because, I mean, unless you tell the refs what you're doing, like,
Yeah.
they're not going to have any
Yeah.
idea. That's not something they're ever going to see.
Yeah.
But I do think there's going to be people running it. I mean, it's already out there,
Yeah.
or I wouldn't be
Like
talking about it
Spectrum.
because of Spectrum's the sauce.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is,
That-
it's unexpected in Georgia, right? But they should expect that kind of stuff at Worlds.
Yes.
And they,
Yeah.
they should be
I-
prepared for that.
I'm concerned. We'll see. I'm going to make even more because I don't know how they're going to view momentary, because there's already areas that aren't calling it correctly.
Yeah, where if it
Yeah, so the luck of the draw and where your
Yeah.
refs for your field come
Yeah.
from, and
And
How
I
they've
don't
been
want to
calling it
start out
locally.
the first qual match having to go to the question box and argue with referees. I really don't.
yeah. Yeah, I guess there's fields usually hold their own drivers'
Yeah.
meetings, right?
So we're gonna see how that goes.
We wish you the best of luck.
Thank you.
Back to qualifications.
I
You're
think
really
we,
going off the rails.
I think we've moved well beyond. Can we?
We had an
is there,
agenda.
is there anything else we need to talk
Yeah.
about?
Existed in
qualifications?
theory.
Just a couple of things, right? So, noticeable performances. For me, I was really impressed with 4509 ranking as well as they did. Seeding highly, they were just very consistent. They had a variable distance shot, but seeing them kind of improve from Dalton to Carrollton, and then finally the state championships, they put it all together. And
What I really liked watching was how the drivers improved across the event, because they got their shooter working, and if you watched their first match, if you noticed, they weren't waiting for the hood to get positioned, and they're missing, but they figured it out very quickly, and you saw even in eliminations, because I was wondering if it would get to them, when they're playing y'all, they have crazy defense going on, but every time you'd watch the hood get up to position, and they never like jumped the shot. They were always there. I was very impressed with how much they improved over the course of the season.
So
That's what
along
they're
that, I also want to point out something from a gracious professionalism standpoint. That 1771 went over during spring break and worked with them and helping them out. It's always great to see everybody else helping everybody else
Yeah.
out. You know, lifting everybody up, not just trying to
Yeah.
look out for yourselves.
Yep.
Yeah, good to compare notes when you can for
Oh yeah.
getting some sanity
Yeah.
sanity checks here
Yeah.
and
Like,
there.
hey, that's
Hey.
a good climber. I like that.
Glad it worked out for you. Glad we could pick you.
I told you I wouldn't use it against you. You picked us.
And then from our point of view, it's great to see some of the teams that we didn't see all year, like the Robo Lions. I thought did really
Yes.
well, and
Yeah.
They made
Are the
Worlds.
Robolines going to Worlds?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah, I
they
believe
They've
so.
qualified, I believe.
So that, I think they really stepped up their game. It was good to see the Commodores, because obviously they won too.
I
and
think
it's
that-
nice to see them. And
I think the Commodores are the perfect example every year of how to plan, balance, and say, this is what we can do. I know we can accomplish that, and
Yeah.
we're going to do it really well. And I love that about them.
Yeah, I don't
every
think they've
year
ever,
they do that.
They've never overreached.
And it's not like they underreach either. They always have like that perfect magic sauce. Like they always target that magic spot and they're playing the district exceptionally well.
Yep.
And then, I think you have to give Columbus credit, 'cause it looked like you could almost count them out just due to the various issues they were having, but they kind of stormed back,
Yeah.
inched up the rankings, and put themselves in a position to play well in the playoffs, and
Yeah.
they made it to the finals. So
I was
yeah.
really impressed with 6340. They're a team that has never like really been super high on the radar. But they came in, ranked really highly. They had a very consistent close-up shot. They had the traversal climb too, right?
Yep.
Yep,
Yeah.
and they won EI.
They're very solid robot, very solid program so far. They came to state championships to play and prove that they belong up there.
Yep.
Yeah, they
So-
even teamed up with their traversal buddies for 6705 from the Dalton Alliance that got to finals for getting that group back together for getting up to the traversal bar. We also had an interesting robot at state champs was an 8849 who I think a lot of us had in matches on our qual schedule, but had a noticeable empty spot on the field. I forget if anybody had any more particular insights on 8849's.
I think I don't think they were swerved to start the year, and then
Yeah.
they decided to have a swerve at states.
And they had 2 iterations of Swerve at States.
I saw them.
I did not know that.
I saw
They,
them-
they
I saw
showed
them
up
on
to
the
States
field.
with Swerve and Steer, and they left States with MK4s.
Hmm.
I did see. I know they missed a lot of matches working through that, the iteration process there. But I did see them on the field just
Yeah.
before elims that the FTAs
Yeah.
had gotten them out there just for. All right, you've been here all the event. We're
Yeah.
gonna get you some of that field experience, see how this thing's working.
So speaking about switching designs,
Oh yeah. So this was something crazy that I noticed. So let's take a look. Let's go all the way back to
Columbus?
Columbus. Yeah. Let me see if I can find that video.
And we don't have the
Okay.
full story here, so somebody might be able to fill us in on the details here. But we've noticed,
Yeah.
Anupam here noticed an interesting pattern
Yeah.
that developed for this
So
particular
I want
team.
you to let's see if we can find.
It's
that.
they're right there in the background.
Oh, they back right here. Oh no, yeah, right here in this background. You notice this is 3344. It looks like they've got like a little hooded shooter. Is there a better angle? Yeah, right here. You got a turret, hooded shooter, mechanism wheel, drive, intake system, playing defense. Right. We're gonna fast forward 2 weeks. We're gonna go to Albany. If I can find the right window. Oh yeah, I have to exit out of this. All right. We're gonna fast forward. This is Albany quarterfinal match 4, and here they're behind the hub here right now. So.
But wait, just wait until they come out.
Yeah. Do you notice something different?
their
Here-
turret looks different, just a little bit.
Yeah. They didn't. That looks
Looks
like
eerily familiar to a resource from a team out in Texas.
Yeah. I'm gonna speed it up a little bit. Yeah. You notice like. First of all, look at how they're driving. They are not driving an omnidirectional drive like a mechanism wheel would give them. They have a different intake. It doesn't look like they've got a. Yeah, that's a weird turret on there.
They got-
Yeah, it's basically an everybot.
Yeah.
It
It
is
is an everybot. Like they've got the everybot climber. All right, so now we're gonna fast forward. Not even a week later. Oh gosh.
Yeah, 5
And
days
escape.
later.
5 days later, into state championships, qual match 55. Do you notice something here?
Actual turret.
They've got a turret. They've got vision tracking. They've got this pretty cool intake, I've got to say. Like, that they just picked up that ball.
Yeah, it looks like the intake that was there for the original event is no longer there. They've got some iteration there. Yeah, very curious story we've got here. If
Yeah.
anybody from 3344
Yeah.
is out there.
Looking from the outside, it looks like they built an everybot. Maybe they have, rookies doing a simpler one, but it looks like they had 2 bots and used a longer break to work on their main bot and took the other one in. Yeah, cool though.
Very interesting. Like that. I would love to hear the story behind that. Like, did y'all have 2 different robots?
If they didn't have 2 robots, I'm very impressed at the fact that they were able to
Modify it.
change it
Yeah.
so fast.
Every bot looks like to be a different drivetrain. Looks to be longer.
Yeah.
It isn't just a wheel swap.
Yeah, I think they were in that match where they scored 100. We scored 116 versus 123, and they had a 2-wall auton that actually worked and shot both into the high goal.
Yeah, but which 3344 wasn't? No.
That's just crazy. Like, they have the turret tracking on there too. That's an insane jump.
Yeah, I think this is some again awesome
Right.
things that are allowed by no bag.
Exactly.
Is that you're able to, the possibilities are a lot more broad. The flexibilities are there to say, all right, we have one robot, now let's work on a second one
Yeah.
and see which
Before
one does
you-
better before the event.
You'd go to a third out-of-state district event so you can get drive practice and get 30 more pounds of changes on your bot in 6 more hours. And now you don't have to do that. You can just start work at your own pleasure.
Which I think
Yeah.
is going to lead to a lot less teams competing out of their district because they can
Yeah.
just do it at their shop, or there's just a little bit of lost value to
Hey.
getting an extra event in.
Paying $5,000 so you could work on your robot really benefited no one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, first, but
Yeah.
I think this being the first year that we see no unbag, I think it's very, very nice. I think the big fear that a lot of teams had going in is like, oh, the big boys are going to get so much better. It's just going to widen the gap. But I think it's really shortened it because teams have
Yeah.
been able to reach just a bit more. Because if you reach far and missed, it's like, well, it's in a bag for 3 weeks. You can't touch it. But now it's like, oh, we haven't reached for our first event, but we can just still work on it. It's
Because
fine.
I think that's kind of how we ended up with our bot. I don't know if you've been paying attention, but 1771 for like 3 years showed up with parts in a bag.
Oh, we know.
That's where they went.
Yeah, we know.
Know nothing about that.
And then all of a
Otto
sudden,
did
the
the
first
same.
year without a bag, and they get to work on it all the time.
Brian, you tried the 1746 strategy. Maybe you should try that one out.
We may have done that before.
I imagine everybody
Maybe
remembers
once or twice.
the dung beetle we started this season with in 2019 that had the 4x4 screwed to the chassis with a rotating arm, and then we finished out states with a full elevator.
Oh, was that 2018?
2018, yeah, you're right, that was 18.
Yeah,
So-
you missed half your quals matches at Dalton, and yeah.
Missed all of their quals
All
matches as
over.
adults, and still won the event.
Somebody's got to be third bot,
Speaking of third bots.
Alliance selections?
Yeah.
Whoa.
So this was a very interesting alliance selections. I'm gonna say, like, number 1 pick. I think everybody
Nobody
saw
was
it.
surprised.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Number 2 pick. I was kind of surprised.
We were looking. I don't have the scouting data in front of me, but just remembering from what we had talked about the previous night at Otto's scouting discussion, of like it was a very clear 1771 and Walton were 1-2, and then it was 4188 if I remember correctly, 4188, 6919 right there. Then it was like Otto and 6705, or not 6705, but like Otto and 1261 right there, and then 1414 because they had consistency issues. And then Ignite as well with their consistency issues right
Don't
there.
forget the mechanisms.
Yeah, I was
And
gonna
then
say,
and then the mechanisms were also in there somewhere because they were also having big consistency issues throughout the event.
the mechanisms were doing a lot better than I think you're giving the credit for. I think
They were still with their consistency issues
yeah.
doing lights out. It's just the weird case where we were so used to them being
Yeah.
the out and out second best cargo team.
I think there is a difference though, like when you look at one team and they have consistency issues, and then you're like, so what happened? And they give you an explanation. You're like, okay, well, we'll see how that continues. And then there's another team where you can talk and you're like, okay, no, you have that solved. That's
Yeah.
yeah.
And
that's the way it was with the mechanisms. They had like 3 or 4 matches like that, and then they definitely fixed their issue, and I think they performed like very admirably the rest of the event.
They definitely had a glow up on day 2. But at
Yeah.
the end of day 1, they definitely were still a lot of issues there because they had a
Yeah.
couple matches where they didn't score
Because
cargo
I
at
still
all.
would have probably put them above 4188.
Yeah. Just at the time they hadn't
Yeah.
had their Saturday glow up yet, and
I
then
agree
to
with you,
see.
Yeah.
Okay. Stop distracting me.
Squirrel.
But it was very, very weird to see 14-14 get picked so early. I think there had been the case where they had a couple flash in the pans. Okay, when they're on, they're on. And if you're looking at 69-19's perspective, they're looking, we want to win this thing. If we can pick a surefire 41-88, which is we know what we're going to get with them, but we don't think that beats 17-71 in Walton. So we're going to go with the team that has a variability there, which is a valid strategy. Ended up biting them a bit because they ended up getting beat by 41-88 and 12-61. But
I am really surprised by 41-88's continually going after the shoot on the move.
I think it's an admirable thing if you can get it to work. Just from a trying to play the game standpoint of game planning it. That is the ultimate goal, because then you truly become.
But I think it's one of those things that you play with the switch, turning it on and off, and then you have to get to a point before you say, okay, we're turning this on in a match.
I think it's valuable if you're getting under heavy defense a lot, especially elims. But if they're not rotating your way, you want to go without that and just go fast.
I think it's kind of almost on the same level as the traverse. Like your team's like, oh, I gotta have that traverse. I feel like it's kind of a trap.
I also think their intake is just to get that to go when you're doing it. You run the danger of you push the ball along with you as you move. I think to really truly do shoot on the move, you need to have touch it, own it intakes. And I just with 41-88, their intake, they've definitely had issues throughout their events.
They need to be able to chase the balls more aggressively, which I don't think right now they can do with their shoot on the move.
That and I don't know if they have a gearing. Their gearing's any slightly slower, or if it's just a refinement on their swerve. But I think they pulled off swerve very well. Yes. But I think there's still an extra notch they have to go in order to be quite as smooth and efficient.
The other thing is, I still have them up there right there with mechanisms, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's
right
not a lot
there.
of gap there.
There's not.
Right. It's just like the small difference that
The
I would
incremental
put
gains.
mechanism, right?
Yes.
So, and there is a significant, between those four bots in the next tier, there is a fairly good sized drop off, not huge, but just noticeable drop off. So, those four bots up top have a strong shooting game.
And 41-88 was one of the few swerve teams that suffered from spinny syndrome, where they were where even 1771 had it for a little bit at Dalton, where it's like, we have swerve, we spin everywhere, where they were consistently spinning not around. Having that issue. Like IHOT at Albany was very fun to watch. Of they just needed to go point A, point B, and they were already in the right orientation, but you'd see them do 360 degrees of rotation because they could.
This reminds me a little bit of 2019 though. After state champs, we realized we were sending some real tough bots to Worlds. That I think there was a powwow at one point with all the teams just to share notes, say, all right, what do we view as your strengths and what are your weaknesses, so that you can work on refining those things before World Champs. And in 41-88, if you're listening right now, we're hoping. I think that you're taking notes on these and working on refining those things. But again, as Brian pointed out, you're still one of the top bots in the state in a significant manner. That there's a lot to be patting yourselves on the back for right now.
I mean, we're talking about whether they should be shooting on the move. I mean, that's a huge accomplishment.
You have to give them credit for this. Look at this move just in a sec. They're gonna play around a lot of heavy traffic here, and they shoot on the move there. Navigating that traffic, you can't. And against defense there, they just have, because of the shoot on the move, they don't care if they get bumps that. That does give them some major advantages there. But they have to practice with it. They have to figure out how they can. I think they have to.
I think they're only going to improve from where they are.
Yeah. They're in a really good position to be competitive at Worlds, and I think, harkening back, since this is the end of the season for a lot of teams, all but 10 teams in the state of Georgia, and I think, with how few teams we're sending, I think this is the teams we're sending is the best crop, at least on the top of that. With the weird cases of some team with how the district points ended out. Some teams got in with culture awards and stuff. But I do think this is the best group we're sending. It would have been nice if we could have had more teams, because I think
Yeah.
iHot just barely missed out. Ignite Auto just barely missed out. So it'd be not. I really hope and look forward that we see Worlds go back up to the 800 teams we're used to in the past, instead of the 400 team event it's going to be.
You mean we can't go back to one Worlds?
I want no. So I really want one Worlds, but I think the 2016 Worlds is a perfect, like, you have 8 divisions
I love that.
with 100 or just under 100 robots each.
Yeah, it was,
I think St. Louis is like the 2016 Worlds. It was my first Worlds. I'm baby compared to y'all. I mean, Kellen talked about a FRC game when I was in kindergarten. I think if we're able to find
he just called you old.
he is. You don't win Woody Flowers on finalist unless you've got some years behind you.
You started getting some gray hair there?
Yeah. Yeah, usually people think I'm a high schooler still, so I guess this is how it feels to be
If you're
mistaken
getting
the other
gray
way.
hair, it's definitely Thomas's fault.
Agreed.
Agreed. I've definitely, as a student, gave him some reasons to get some gray hair. But I really think that what first should kind of push for and achieve is similar to what the FTC does, where I think I want, if anything, Worlds to get smaller, and I want to have super regionals rise up and have super regionals be these massive events where you have the rookie teams going and you have the chairman's teams and the EI teams, and we made it to super regionals. That is the really big thing, and then Worlds be the 100 best robots in the world are there at that event at any given time.
The only thing I worry about that is, like, they have to find a way to make the events cheaper. Because when you're talking about adding this many events, you can't be spending $5,000 on every
Yeah,
We
event.
already spent so much on state champs.
Well, in that argument, I'd make it so those super regionals would take the place of district champs.
Yeah.
So you wind up having a region where it's the
that.
district champ. So we'd still do our 2 district events, go to that super regional from
I would-
there,
yeah,
and
that
then
would-
to
so,
a
yeah.
smaller world championship.
I still love going into 2016 and going into the St. Louis Rams Stadium, and from a 30-yard line to the 30-yard line on the other side, just full of students and mentors. It was a great experience. I just loved it. I loved having just seeing 8 fields laid out. It was just massive in scale.
Which I think you could justify doing for those super regional events and making them those culture shifting events that First likes to hold up the World Championship event. They're like, we want more teams to have this experience. Well, make those super regionals, and then make that World Championship the best of the best.
Yep.
And say, make that the gold standard, but everybody else still gets this awesome experience.
Yeah.
Because you need those teams to drive you. Like, it's incredible watching them year after year.
Yeah, and I think the powerhouse teams, I think the biggest benefit, and everybody likes to rag on them on Chief Delphi, they're too good, they take our world spot away because we are the 4th seed, we have to face them. I think they're a net positive because they give the carrot for everybody to chase. I think without them, I know with Otto, there are a couple projects that we're cooking up just because 1771 was such a powerhouse this year. I think they give you
Surprise, it's Swerve Drive.
Yes. We are going to try that, and I think the powerhouse teams give you something to aspire to. I know when I was a student, coming home, talking with my parents of like, oh, we can't do it, and my dad just going, you dummy, yes you can, just try harder. And then it's like, oh, okay.
I think it might be cool, I don't know if it would ever be possible, to do like a fall thing where like everybody brings their robots together, not so much for a competition, but to talk about, this is why we think our robot's cool. This is what we spent 3 months developing, and we're
almost
super proud
not
of
a
it.
competition, but like a science
symposium.
fair.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think like the science fair, like exactly that, a science fair. You all come and present, this is why we think our robot's cool. We spent 3 months on doing code so we could shoot on the move and calculating vectors on the balls coming out of the robot. Or
That's where Georgia First does the Georgia First Symposium. I know it's been virtual,
Yeah.
but it would be a very interesting thing to work into that.
Which
is-
to bring the robots
yeah,
themselves.
bring your
Yeah.
team and your robot, and we'll have a couple hour session for you. Us.
For every team to just talk about their robot.
Even if it's not about the robot, I know there are teams who do like Otto. I'm very proud of what our students were able to do on like creating the scouting system we used. I think it'd be very cool where there's a lot of stuff that teams do outside of just the robots that kind of get glossed over
Yeah.
by the judges. Like I honestly think there should be awards or stuff put out there for, oh, this team does scouting really well in a new and innovative way, or does it in a way that is significantly like
Yeah.
I think, and I really think a event like that would be really beneficial. Of like to give teams recognition for doing that, but also have teams get exposed to it. Because there have definitely been events where Georgia First has a lack of knowledge in certain areas historically. Like scouting was one, programming used to be one. We're now really getting up there with doing all the crazy stuff. So it'd be nice to have a symposium beyond that.
Yeah.
So, then the challenge is for each of the teams here to figure out something that they could, a hands-on demonstration, fundamentally, at symposium, because you can do this at symposium, right? Everybody's going to be there. So instead of just being a slideshow presentation, make it a hands-on experience and walk through the details.
Yeah, make
right?
it interactive and
Right. So Walton, you made a great driving robot. You have a lot of controls experience, right? You could walk through and say how it, in sort more of a open house discussion instead of a rigid presentation, right?
Mhm.
Make it interactive, get people coming up, looking at things, talking about how you did your swerve modules.
Bring a spare swerve
chose your
module you can
swerve
pass
mo-
around.
How you chose your
spare.
so how 7171 chose your swerve modules? You went through the engineering design review to pick what you did
Yeah.
specifically, right?
We spent a lot of time on
Right.
And better yet, here's the code for it.
Right?
Yeah.
And mechanisms went a different way, and when they played defense against us at Dalton and went over our bumpers, or we went over their bumpers from them pushing, we hit one of their swerve modules,
Yeah.
right? Your design did not have that issue. So it's those kind of small details that allow the top teams to not have to fight the small, like,
The
And,
small little
and that's one of those
issues.
things that comes back to like what I always talk about, like the design journal or the notes from the year. That whole reason is because of 2019's when we got shoved under the hab and it broke one of our corner brackets, and that's how the air tank came
I
out.
think we were both there for that, right, Brian?
Yeah.
oh yeah.
what? That
What was
happened?
that?
Really?
What is that?
Blurry memory.
Yeah. We're old, right?
But that's one of those perfect things.
You know,
Those painful
sometimes-
memories stick with a team,
Yes.
and that they are lessons that will not be forgotten.
And I think
You're
Like,
welcome.
through and code.
Helping each other.
no,
But they
no,
really are the
it's
same-
already an issue with our team bringing that up 3 years
But
after
that's
the
what,
fact.
That's one of the things like I wanted to be stressing to our team. We haven't even had a chance to do our full debrief yet. But that match 29, we uncovered something that did not derail the season that could potentially have that because of like what happened in that match, that we will have thorough discussions on how to prevent that in the future.
Yeah.
Because we absolutely had that match in hand. If we had just stuck to what we do and maintained what we did.
You know, going back to Dalton, Oscar 832, breaking down on the field, but the climber still worked. Their drive team knew it well enough
Yes.
to talk to you guys to push you over there.
It was
That's what you need.
instantaneous communication, and I told everyone I possibly had that was my favorite moment in the whole season. Instantaneous. This is the status of our robot. This is what we funk chested, and this is where we are. And instantly, Simon was like, "Okay, I got you."
That's
Yeah, and I think that's very interesting. I think that the fighting the quicksand is a big thing a lot of teams have issues with, where something for whatever reason goes wrong, and that just sets off a training reaction of
Yeah.
if that if the stuff just goes wrong in a different order, or if it going off in sequence where you're constantly trying to fight to keep ahead of the things that are going wrong. If you can get ahead of it and just go, okay, that one wrong, move on, is very, very beneficial skill for a lot of teams to have.
Well, I think we've got some unplanned content, some planned content we might not get to. We might have to come back next week for doing a more, a bit of a dive into some preview for World Championships.
Yeah, why don't we wait for divisions to come out and then do a preview for that?
Yeah. No good making guesses without all the information, right?
1771 and Walton are going to be in the same division and then win Worlds together. Calling it now.
Sign me up. But
Third robot is 1690 orbit somehow.
but a couple of other.
Before, can I show one thing? I just want to brag about this one match. Sorry, Kellen.
No, I'll get this in while you already have it pulled up.
I've got it pulled up.
Okay.
So earlier, 1746, we were having discussions on how we could possibly beat 1771. This strategy that we're about to show you has been in some of our minds for over 3
Is this
and
the
a half
match that you
weeks.
told Parker to shoot balls when he didn't have
No,
balls?
that is not. That was once. Okay, I will admit I am not the
You're not
best
supposed to
drive
talk
coach.
about that secret strategy, Tom.
And he's not supposed to talk about when I drew through an encoder wire 3 years ago, but here we are.
I subbed in for Kellen for drive coach a couple times. He had one of those job things, I don't know about that. But this was not a match that I coached. This was a match that Kellen coached. But this strategy here, we had been it'd been in our minds for like 3 weeks. The moment we saw 1771 and their dominant performance, we thought this was possibly the only way to beat them. In the first semifinal match, we tried to outshoot them, play like a normal match. That didn't work clearly. So we were like, all right, we're going to this strategy.
And
this is it. This is the last match of our season, potentially. Let's pull this off. So you'll notice autonomous, it's going to start normally. Getting there, shooting our second ball. Ignite with their 4-ball auton was amazing. So we were able to catch them up in autonomous here. But you'll notice that auto, we're not playing offense here. We switched to double defense. Yeah. And the reason for that was we wanted to slow down both Walton and 1771. And this was the play. 7315 comes over here to play counter defense, leaving 6829 free to shoot. Right? 6829 free to shoot, while their 2 offensive robots have defense on them. And at some point, we also, Grady, G3 picks up 2 red cargo, and we pick up a red cargo. So we're also starving them of balls that they have on the field. This was the strategy that we thought would be the only one to beat a powerhouse alliance.
And one of the cool stories from this is Casey, Otto's driver of years past in 2019 and 2020, comes down, he's talking to the driver of Otto's robot, Parker, and he's like, are you ready for the defense? And Parker just turns to Casey and goes, I am the defense.
Yeah. So I'm going to pause it right here. This was check this out. We have you in cargo at this moment, and then G3 breaks for the climb, and I think this was where we made the mistake in this strategy.
I think the weird part is we're at there in cargo, but we're still down the 4 points. I don't know if that was just an extra ball scored in Auton.
I think they were up 1 cargo in Auton.
I think there was penalties before this.
Yeah, they also finished the match with 8 foul points awarded to them.
I think this was the one mistake, was maybe G3 going for the climb.
And instead of G3 going for the climb, just having them stay out, and then us and Ignite going for the very fast high bars.
That or have Ignite climb and we switch to offense while G3 plays defense, because I think we could have outshot, in the last 30 seconds, what we could have gotten here climb.
That we got a little unlucky. Unfortunately, Grady's climb wound up going out of the 16-inch perimeter and was nullified, and their bot was touching our robot, so those points got canceled as well. So that's why in the final score you'd see it 16 points lower than it would show, or it would be potentially be, should we have been awarded those climbs. But it was I think we were allowed some strategic freedoms, knowing the powerhouse we were going up against. We're like, well, this didn't work, so let's try something entirely different.
What's funny is I literally told Walton and our drivers, I was like, they're up to something before the match started.
We had the fun of calling a timeout because we had a climber issue that we wound up finding immediately after we called the timeout. but that allowed us the time on the field to chat up 1771 a bit, and I had some fun asking the questions of, well, what's the best defense you played against this year? And how did you react to that defense? And
I didn't think much about it, and then I'm behind the glass, they're getting ready to count down, and I'm like, they're going to try something.
So Kyle was out at midfield, and you were immediately behind him. And I was talking straight to him. I'm like, we're about to play defense on them, and they don't know it.
That was great.
So it was too much fun to watch. And again, I think it allowed us to our team specifically, and I think our alliance, to kind of end the season on a high note, knowing that we went out playing the game how we wanted to play it. And losing to obviously the best alliance.
Playing defense is some of the most fun a driver will ever have.
Yeah, and as we're getting to wrapping up, a brief shout out the teams that haven't really been mentioned. 5900, whose robot wasn't at the event, won EI, and now their robot gets to compete at Worlds.
They have an amazing program in the building. You've seen not just their crowd size, but the impact they have in that Dalton area.
Yeah, the very, very, very inspirational team. 6340, we mentioned previously, won the other EI.
Some mongooses and manatees. Yes.
Yep.
We got the animal alliance over here.
Yep, and then huge shout out to our with Otto, they're the team down the road. Team 7451, winning Chairman's Award.
Just a few years after being a rookie too.
And I think that's, especially with the fact that they have a new teacher heading them, the fact that they were able to continue that momentum with it. For a lot of teams, if you just the one key mentor leaving can, like if Kellen were to leave Otto, and that it would be it's impressive that they were able just to keep going. And listen, you're really great, but you have to acknowledge that Kellen's just on the league when it comes to this thing.
I couldn't do anything without this award-winning mentor.
I think statements like that don't really speak to how poor other mentors are. It's just like there are people who are just so much better at it than us, or me specifically. It's like, wow, I do a lot and I try to do my best, but like I pale in comparison. Like Eric Kaufman, who formerly of Walton and is now with G3, and what Chris has been able to do with 1771. It's truly impressive what these guys are able to do, and the fact that they were able, or they lost their version of that, got a new one, and were just able to keep on trucking is quite impressive.
Yeah, I think when I look back on this season, some of my fondest memories will be Dalton semifinals and state semifinals.
I'll agree.
We lost, but it was so much fun.
Those were the only elimination matches that we. There was the finals against y'all, but when the stress kind of fell off after 4188 ran into issues in finals too, it was a lot. It was a little anticlimactic there, because I think y'all I think final two could have been really interesting, but unfortunately they had that issue, which I'm glad they got worked out. But Dalton was very stressful.
We were stressed. And it's one of those situations where if you look at Dalton, if you have, when you're facing that Goliath, you can't give them the chance to come back. And then our alliance gave them the chance to come back, and it's that old adage of like the Michael Jordan, and I took that personally. It's like when you are punching from behind, you're punching above your weight class. When you have your shots, you have to take them. And that's the fun thing. I love being the underdog. It's so much fun being able to go like, we're supposed to lose, but we're not gonna.
Dude, we pulled out every trick we had up our sleeve to try and beat you guys. We planned our playoff alliance around what can we potentially do to beat you guys.
As soon as y'all picked up G3, I was concerned.
All we hope is that it's made you that much stronger than for competing at Worlds and being ready for whatever gets thrown at you there. So, wishing the best of luck to all teams that are going. If I were to offer any note of advice to those teams going is, compare notes to the teams that are there. Check out other robots, learn from the things they've learned from.
Have fun.
Yeah, have fun. But there's so many things to learn. Make sure your students enjoy the experience. Talk to teams from different places around the world. There's plenty to learn there.
And send plenty of pictures home for us to enjoy.
Talk to the Michigan teams while you can.
Yeah, those guys. I think it's gonna be like, because this is the first time we're seeing Michigan and Canada teams in a while.
Yep.
So, and it potentially has that's will probably go away. So, use it while you have it.
All right.
And then I just want to mention one thing,
Yeah.
since I didn't find a good place to put this in, but for the teams out there that want to get better, who didn't make Worlds, that want to get better next year, use the DE sites frequently. We could look at most of the top teams that made it. They were, a lot of them were at Walton all the time.
I think
It does make a difference. So
another benefit of the Walton sites is like the work between the teams, because there's a lot at
Absolutely,
Walton.
yes.
Built
it's very
site,
collaborative.
We
as
was
well.
yes, very collaborative. Like Walton helping us helping Walton, like working
Yeah.
with the other teams there. Like everybody is helping build each other up, and I think it makes a huge difference.
Yeah. For those teams that didn't qualify, the off season started a few days ago. So,
So I'm hoping they have July Heat and Grits. I think
I
having
think that's
a
very-
couple events spaced apart allows teams to keep iterating on what they have. And if you thought States was good, wait till you see Grits and people have another 9
I
months.
think Gritsby is that weird thing where you say that, but every year there's like in 2017, 2015, we had a rookie drivers in and watch us in finals, and I think July Heat has that potential. I think Grit should be we're preparing our guys for the next season and very much be the rookie. I think if July Heat becomes the very much of this is our last hoorah. You have the seniors who've graduated. It's their summer before college. I think July Heat should very much become the IRI of Georgia, where it's we're punching and it's very fun. Best matches you'll see all year. And then I think Grit should really mold and become the learning experience that I think it's intended to be.
And I think it will be, but I would use it a little differently because as we found out this season, there's nothing better to get students trained in what they need to do than to actually have them working on a bot that needs an improvement instead of doing classroom, right?
Yeah.
FRC is so much fun because of all the fun we have in the field. And if you do a bunch of training, and I know some people or I've heard me say this before, right? If the classroom was so great, FRC would be so much fun, right?
No, and
so by making Grits a project of we're going to make this improvement to be better, right? The students can actually put their effort in. They're going to see it on the field and have the fun that we had at States at Grits.
Yeah, and I think what I said was misinterpreted a bit, and I'm not saying teams shouldn't go out and do that, but I think like Otto has gone out in the not the most recent Grits, but like in 2019 Grits of going out and building a whole new robot that we use to cut the teeth on our rookies, and G3 has used Grits historically to do
Well, that's
that.
what I think. It's up to any given team how they use the event to say, all right, here's where we're at in our development cycle. Here's how we can best use the event. That it's a very team by team situation.
I think that's something that's the key thing to understanding on an FRC team is, again, to build between your means and build with what you know. And like working with what you're comfortable with makes a huge difference.
I know at Grits a lot of times we rotate drivers, right? But the build process that we went through for Grits and July Heat really showed its benefit when we came into this season.
Yep.
Well, Thomas, did you get in your contractually obligated?
Yes, I said it at the beginning. I said they did great. I've done my one.
Why did you slap him with the stick again?
He hasn't. No. I did not clown Walton at all. I fulfilled my obligations. I would like to mention, Kyle, upon hearing of his contractual obligations, decided to not show up.
Hold on. You're not going to do that. Kyle was relaying your comments. Now you're going to throw Kyle in the bus?
Well, no. So
it's
Kyle
you.
relayed
That
my
deserves a
comments,
slap.
but Kyle also has said some things over the years about Walton and intakes where he had the opportunity to come here today.
Blame shifting here. I see.
No, I said that their 2 intakes
Where's that
was
viewpoint?
weird.
Yeah, but
I said that.
until the Cheesy Poops did it, then you had to say, "Oh, that was genius."
I don't think I ever said it was genius that the Cheesy Poops did it. I just said they did it better.
They have like the top,
they're
top
doing
OPR
real
in the
well.
world.
Yeah.
They have the highest score in the world their very first match of their very first competition. So.
Yeah, they're doing
You have to
some.
give them credit.
They're doing some crazy things. If
Yeah.
you I think the coolest thing I've heard is when they're putting their intakes in and out, they hold their second ball in the opposite intake they're using. So when the intakes swap, the ball that they're holding travels through their robot to the other intake.
Hey, Thomas,
as they're
you know what time it is? Go get the lights.
All right, and with these comments, any very quick final thoughts from all of our guests this
It's
I think we've run a little bit long on our
Yeah.
timing. We'll
It's
do
okay.
one quick final thought from everybody as we have just wrapped up our state championship event. Looking forward to Worlds.
Maybe a big thanks to all the Georgia volunteers that made the season happen, because
Yes.
it was amazing.
It's always a huge shout out to be given.
Yeah.
This crew just continues showing
Yes.
up year after year. I've been lucky enough to volunteer and be part of that group a couple times in the past. It's always a fantastic
It is.
experience. So if you're not willing to put in the full effort with a FRC team for the full season, getting out to volunteer is always a good time. So, all right. Any other final thoughts from anybody else?
Congratulations on your
Yeah,
award.
so
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
thank you very much. It was
You deserve it.
Yep.
entirely overwhelming and cried a few times.
This program would not be where it is without this man here. Like, I just joined in 2019, but this guy got me in, and we've been building something cool here ever since.
I would not be here if it weren't for Kellen, for better or worse.
Yeah, it's just too much fun to walk away from, and too much fun to be had for still doing it. So it's awesome to be working for doing shows like this with all of you, for talking to all of our listeners that are out there. Again, just way too much fun. So
It's been a wonderful season for us. Your seasons aren't done yet. Go to Houston, bring some hardware home, bring some respect to Peachtree.
Yeah.
And I'm watching fun and other shows, and like
They don't talk about us down here.
They don't know what's happening in the southeast.
We got mentioned after Carrollton.
yeah, I've had a couple people from
Yeah.
different places reach out, and they're like, "What happened with 77? Where did they come from? They're obviously an old team number, but what's going on here?" So yeah, we'll be cheering for you from
Yeah.
Georgia. I might show up. We'll see.
Be sure to stop by if you do.
Oh, will do. But yeah, again, best of luck to all Peachtree teams going. We'll see if we get another show out next week, talking a little bit more about what divisions teams are in and what to look out for. But until then, we're gonna call it a night from Peach Pit. We'll see you next time.
See you next time.